There are moments in every investigation where a single object becomes the thread that unravels everything. A fingerprint on glass. A receipt in a pocket. A shoe print in mud. In the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, that object is a backpack. Not just any backpack, but a specific model carried by a masked figure who approached an elderly woman's door at 2:27 in the morning, 11 minutes before her pacemaker stopped transmitting vital signs to medical monitors. The backpack is traceable. The backpack is purchasable. The backpack, according to FBI investigators combing through tens of thousands of tips, could be the single piece of evidence that identifies who took an 84-year-old grandmother from her home in the pre-dawn hours of February 1, 2026. This is the story of how modern investigative technology recovered surveillance footage that was believed to be permanently deleted, how a Walmart-exclusive product became the focus of a multi-state manhunt, and how 18,000 tips from concerned citizens are being processed by hundreds of federal agents searching for answers in the Arizona desert. Before we go further, if you're drawn to cases where forensic breakthroughs and cutting-edge investigative techniques combine to pursue justice, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. We analyze real investigations using verified sources, official statements, and documented evidence to understand how these cases unfold in real time. Hit that subscribe button now because the details in this case are developing rapidly, and you won't want to miss what happens next. January 31, 2026 began as an ordinary Saturday evening in the Catalina foothills area of Tucson, Arizona. Nancy Guthrie, a woman who had lived independently into her mid-80s with a mind described by law enforcement as sharp as a tack, spent the evening doing what families do. Game night. Laughter around a dining table. The comfortable rhythm of relatives who've known each other for decades sharing food and conversation. Nancy had raised 3 children in Arizona over 5 decades. She'd built a life marked by routine, stability, and the kind of deep family connections that make Saturday evenings feel safe and predictable. By 9:48 p.m., according to the precise timeline established by investigators, a family member dropped Nancy at her front door. She was seen safely inside. Nothing appeared unusual. Nothing triggered concern. The family member drove away with no reason to believe this would be the last time Nancy would be seen alive. What Nancy didn't know as she prepared for bed that night was that someone had been watching. Someone who knew her schedule. Someone who understood when she would be alone. Someone who had studied the security camera mounted on her front porch and knew exactly how to disable it. Someone who would arrive in the darkest hours of the night carrying gloves, a mask, a weapon, and a backpack that would later become the most analyzed piece of evidence in the entire investigation. The doorbell camera on Nancy Guthrie's front porch was a Google Nest device, the kind of smart home technology that millions of Americans rely on to monitor their properties while they sleep. These cameras record continuously, storing footage in cloud-based systems that theoretically preserve evidence even if the physical device is damaged or disabled. The camera at Nancy's residence was functioning normally throughout the evening of January 31st, capturing the ordinary comings and goings of a quiet residential street in the Catalina foothills. Then, at precisely 1:47 in the morning according to digital timestamps that investigators would later analyze frame by frame, the camera went dark. Not because of a power failure. Not because of a technical malfunction. Someone deliberately disconnected it. For 10 days following Nancy's disappearance, investigators believed that whoever disabled the camera had successfully destroyed the visual evidence of their approach. The Google Nest system, as Sheriff Chris Nanos explained in public statements to media, continuously rewrites over its recordings. The camera's software had detected movement at 2:12 in the morning, but the footage itself appeared to be gone, overwritten by the system's automatic storage management. Whoever planned this abduction seemed to understand how modern surveillance technology works and had taken steps to eliminate the digital trail of their crime. They were methodical. They were informed. And they believed they had succeeded in making themselves invisible. They were wrong. What the perpetrator didn't understand is that cloud-based camera systems don't just store data locally on the device or even on a single server. The infrastructure supporting these systems is vast and redundant, with data fragments existing in backup systems and server caches that the average user never sees and that criminals rarely consider when attempting to destroy evidence. For 10 days, FBI digital forensic specialists worked alongside private sector technology partners to excavate what appeared to be permanently lost. According to FBI Director Kash Patel, who announced the breakthrough on February 10, investigators went into back-end systems, into the technical architecture supporting the cloud storage network, searching for residual data that the camera's local rewriting process hadn't reached. Two law enforcement sources confirmed to CBS News that the FBI worked directly with Google to recover the deleted footage, a collaboration between federal investigators and Silicon Valley engineers that demonstrates how modern criminal investigations increasingly depend on corporate cooperation and technical expertise that didn't exist a generation ago. On February 10, 2026, FBI Director Patel released what those 10 days of technical excavation had produced. 6 black and white photographs extracted from 3 video clips totaling 44 seconds of surveillance footage. 44 seconds that captured everything investigators needed to transform this case from a missing person investigation into a targeted manhunt. The footage showed a figure approaching Nancy's front door in the pre-dawn darkness, and what that figure was wearing and carrying would become the foundation of an investigation that has generated more than 18,000 tips from the public and deployed hundreds of federal agents across the Arizona desert. The masked individual visible in the recovered footage was dressed for concealment and violence. A ski mask or balaclava covered the face completely, the kind of winter headwear that stands out immediately in Tucson's mild February climate. Dark jacket. Light-colored pants. Sneakers that would leave minimal distinctive tread patterns. But it was the details visible in those 44 seconds that told investigators this was not a random opportunist. The figure wore gloves, not ordinary winter gloves but heavy-duty vinyl or rubber gloves of the type designed specifically to prevent fingerprint transfer. These are gloves that someone purchases with criminal intent, gloves that demonstrate premeditation and awareness of forensic evidence collection techniques. When Pima County Sheriff's deputies arrived at Nancy Guthrie's residence at approximately 12:13 p.m. on February 1, they were responding to what initially appeared to be a standard welfare check. Family members had grown concerned when Nancy failed to appear for a virtual church service she attended regularly with a friend, a Sunday morning routine that she never missed without explanation. When repeated calls to her phone went unanswered, relatives drove to her home to check on her. What they found when they entered the residence transformed a routine welfare check into a criminal investigation that would eventually involve hundreds of federal agents and generate national media attention. Nancy was gone. Her wallet remained in the house, untouched according to what investigators confirmed. Her cell phone was present and was immediately taken into evidence by responding deputies. Her medications, the daily prescriptions that were medically essential to sustaining her life given her age and health conditions, sat exactly where she had left them. For an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker and serious medical needs requiring daily pharmaceutical management, leaving the house without these items was not a choice she would make voluntarily. The medications told investigators immediately that whatever had happened to Nancy Guthrie, she had not walked away on her own. Then deputies saw the blood. Small droplets on the front stoop, visible in early crime scene footage that CBS News obtained during the first hours of the investigation. Not a large volume suggesting catastrophic injury, but enough to indicate physical trauma had occurred at or near the entrance to the residence. The blood was later confirmed through DNA testing to belong to Nancy, according to what Sheriff Chris Nanos disclosed in public statements. Someone had been injured at that doorway, and that someone was the missing woman whose family was now standing outside waiting for answers. The evidence of forced entry, according to a person familiar with the investigation who spoke to the Associated Press, indicated that someone had broken into the home. The specific method of entry has not been publicly disclosed, but the fact that investigators classified it as forced entry rather than unlocked access is significant. It means whoever entered did so through a barrier that Nancy had secured, suggesting she had taken normal precautions to protect herself before going to bed that night. Those precautions failed because someone was determined enough and prepared enough to overcome them. Sheriff Chris Nanos made a decision in those early hours that would define the entire trajectory of the investigation. He called in the homicide unit. Not just missing persons specialists. Not just search and rescue teams. Criminal homicide investigators who process scenes with the assumption that prosecution will follow. In press conferences over the following days, Sheriff Nanos explained this decision in terms that were both measured and revealing. He noted that in his career he regularly receives briefings on search and rescue operations, but rarely does law enforcement deploy homicide investigators to missing person cases. This case was different. "There is something that is not right here," Nanos stated publicly, a phrase that carried significant weight coming from the county's top law enforcement official. What wasn't right was the pattern. The blood suggested violence. The abandoned medication suggested Nancy was taken against her will without time to gather necessities. The doorbell camera disabled at a precise moment in the middle of the night suggested planning. And the pacemaker monitoring app that went offline at 2:28 in the morning, just 11 minutes after the masked figure appeared on the recovered surveillance footage, suggested something far worse than a simple kidnapping for ransom. Among all the physical characteristics visible in the 44 seconds of recovered surveillance footage, one detail has emerged as the most potentially actionable lead in the entire investigation. The backpack. Not just any backpack carried casually by someone walking through a neighborhood at night, but a specific, fully loaded pack visible on the back of the masked figure who approached Nancy Guthrie's door at 2:27 in the morning. According to reporting by CNN and analysis by investigators who have studied the footage frame by frame, the backpack has been identified as what appears to be an Ozark Trail hiker pack, a product that carries significance far beyond its function as a simple carrying container. Ozark Trail is Walmart's private label outdoor brand, a designation that transforms this backpack from a generic piece of equipment into a traceable retail product with specific distribution patterns. Unlike nationally branded products sold through multiple retailers and online marketplaces where purchase tracking becomes exponentially more difficult, private label brands are sold exclusively through the retailer that owns them. Every Ozark Trail product purchased in the United States was bought at a Walmart store or through Walmart's online platform. That exclusivity creates an investigative pathway that doesn't exist with products available through dozens of different retailers. Walmart purchases can be connected to loyalty programs that link transactions to specific customer accounts. They can be traced through credit and debit card records that financial institutions maintain for years. Walmart stores are equipped with extensive security camera systems that capture customers at checkout lanes, in aisles, and in parking lots. If the backpack visible in the surveillance footage was purchased at a Walmart location, there is a possibility that investigators can identify who bought it, when they bought it, and potentially even capture images of the purchaser on store security systems. This kind of retail transaction tracking has broken cases that appeared to have no leads, providing investigators with a direct thread from a crime scene object back to the individual who acquired it. The FBI and Pima County Sheriff's Department are now working with Walmart corporate security and database management teams to trace purchases of this specific backpack model across Arizona and potentially neighboring states. Investigators are examining transaction records, reviewing security footage from stores that sold the product, and cross-referencing purchase data with other evidence in the case. Former FBI agents who have explained retail tracking techniques to media outlets covering the investigation emphasize that this process is labor-intensive but methodical. Every transaction leaves a digital fingerprint. Every purchase creates a record. Somewhere in Walmart's vast database of sales transactions, there may be a purchase record that connects directly to the person who carried that backpack to Nancy Guthrie's door. Beyond purchase tracking, the specific identification of the backpack allows investigators to compare it against possessions owned by anyone in the suspect pool. Does someone who had access to Nancy's home own this particular model? Does a contractor who worked on her property possess an Ozark Trail hiker pack? Do neighbors captured on other surveillance cameras in the area own matching backpacks? The ability to ask these specific questions and match physical evidence transforms the investigation from searching for an unknown individual into systematically eliminating or confirming specific persons of interest. The backpack was visibly full in the surveillance footage, loaded with equipment that suggests extensive preparation. What was inside the pack remains unknown, but the volume and weight visible in the images indicate the person came equipped for a complex operation. Tools to disable security systems. Restraints to control a victim. Materials to stage or clean a scene. Whatever was carried in that backpack was considered necessary for what the perpetrator planned to do, and identifying what those items were could provide additional investigative leads about where they were purchased and who bought them. The surveillance footage recovered by FBI digital forensics specialists reveals more than just a masked figure approaching a home in the middle of the night. It reveals someone who understood exactly where the security camera was positioned, how it functioned, and what needed to be done to disable it without triggering alerts that would bring immediate response. The precision with which the doorbell camera was disconnected at 1:47 in the morning, a full 40 minutes before the figure appeared on the recovered footage at 2:27, demonstrates planning that goes beyond opportunistic crime. This was someone who had studied Nancy Guthrie's security setup and knew how to defeat it systematically. The lack of forced entry initially reported by investigators, before later disclosures of entry evidence emerged, suggested the perpetrator may have had access to the residence or knowledge of how to enter without creating obvious damage. Even with forced entry confirmed, the method used indicates familiarity with the property's vulnerabilities. Random criminals breaking into homes in the middle of the night typically create noise, trigger alarms, and leave obvious signs of intrusion. This perpetrator moved through Nancy's security measures with efficiency that suggests prior observation or insider information about how the home was protected. The timing of the abduction carries its own implications about insider knowledge. Nancy was taken during a specific window when her daughter Savannah Guthrie, co-anchor of NBC's Today's Show and one of the most recognized faces in morning television, was scheduled to leave the country for Winter Olympics coverage. Someone who knew Savannah's travel schedule might have calculated that this window offered an opportunity when family response would be delayed and Nancy would be alone without her most prominent and resourceful relative nearby. The precision of this timing is not coincidental according to investigative analysis. It suggests someone who understood the family's patterns and deliberately chose a moment of maximum vulnerability. Perhaps the most troubling evidence of planning is what the perpetrator left behind. Nancy's medications, which authorities have confirmed are medically essential to her survival, remained in the house despite the intruder having at least 41 minutes of access to the residence based on the timeline established by digital evidence. Someone motivated by ransom who wanted to keep their victim alive long enough to collect payment would take medications they knew were necessary. Someone who genuinely believed Nancy's family would pay for her safe return would ensure she could be kept healthy during captivity. The decision to leave those medications suggests either that keeping Nancy alive was not the primary goal or that the perpetrator fundamentally misunderstood what holding an elderly hostage would require. The suspect pool that emerges from this pattern of evidence is specific and narrow. Investigators are focusing on individuals who had legitimate reasons to be familiar with Nancy's home and routine. Contractors who performed work on the property and would have observed security systems and entry points. Service providers who visited regularly and understood when Nancy was home alone. Neighbors who could observe comings and goings without attracting attention. Former employees or associates who might have had access at some point and retained knowledge of the residence layout. These are people Nancy would have trusted, people who had been inside her home or close enough to it to gather the intelligence that this crime required. The investigative challenge is that many people fit this profile in some capacity. Any homeowner who has lived in a residence for decades has interacted with dozens of contractors, service providers, and neighbors. Sorting through that population to identify who among them had both the knowledge to plan this abduction and the motive to execute it is the painstaking work that hundreds of investigators are conducting through interviews, background checks, and elimination of individuals who can account for their whereabouts during the critical hours of February 1st. Within days of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, communications began arriving at media outlets claiming responsibility for her abduction and demanding payment for her safe return. According to reporting by local station KGUN9, a ransom demand of $6 million in Bitcoin was received, a sum that presupposes substantial family wealth and access to cryptocurrency infrastructure that most families don't possess. The demand itself, delivered to media rather than directly to the family through secured channels, represented the first of many indicators that this ransom claim didn't follow the patterns that experienced kidnapping investigators expect to see in legitimate hostage situations. Ransom kidnappers operate according to predictable behavioral patterns that law enforcement has documented across decades of cases. They communicate aggressively and consistently with victims' families because their entire motive is financial gain and they cannot collect payment without maintaining dialogue. They provide proof of life quickly to establish that the victim is alive and that payment will result in safe return. They set realistic deadlines and follow through with consequences when those deadlines aren't met because credibility is essential to extracting payment. They take items necessary to keep the victim alive during captivity because a dead hostage has no value in a ransom negotiation. The communications associated with Nancy's disappearance violated nearly every one of these established patterns. Former FBI Special Agent Catherine Schweit, who investigated a similar case in Wisconsin involving an elderly grandmother abducted for ransom, explained to NBC News that aggressive communication is the hallmark of financially motivated kidnapping. If you were going to abduct somebody for cash, she stated, why wouldn't you aggressively try to get the cash by communicating with the family right from the start so you could get your money and return the victim? The Nancy Guthrie case doesn't follow that script. Communication has been sporadic according to what Savannah Guthrie disclosed in public statements. Deadlines mentioned in early ransom demands have passed without follow-up or consequences. No credible proof of life meeting investigative standards has been provided despite the family's repeated public pleas for evidence that Nancy is alive and the communications are genuine. The medications left behind at Nancy's residence represent perhaps the most damning evidence against the ransom theory. An 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker and serious health conditions requiring daily pharmaceutical intervention cannot survive extended captivity without medical support. Someone holding Nancy for ransom would need to provide her medications or arrange medical care to keep her alive long enough to collect payment. The perpetrator had 41 minutes inside the residence according to the timeline established by investigators, more than enough time to locate and take the clearly marked prescription bottles that Nancy's family has confirmed were visible in the home. The decision not to take them suggests either that the perpetrator didn't understand the medical realities of holding an elderly hostage or that keeping Nancy alive was never part of the plan. FBI profilers analyzing the case have expressed skepticism about the ransom motive according to law enforcement sources who spoke to media outlets. The $6 million demand, while substantial, was never accompanied by the kind of detailed payment instructions that serious ransom negotiators provide. Bitcoin transfers require specific wallet addresses, secure communication channels, and verification protocols that protect both parties during the exchange. None of that infrastructure has been evident in the communications received. The demands read more like opportunistic attempts to capitalize on a high-profile disappearance than carefully planned extortion from someone who actually holds Nancy and has the capability to return her safely upon payment. The Guthrie family, desperate for any avenue that might bring Nancy home, responded to the ransom communications publicly. In a video statement posted to Savannah's Instagram account and viewed by millions, the family addressed whoever claimed to have taken Nancy directly. "We received your message and we understand," Savannah said. "We beg you now to return our mother to us. This is very valuable to us and we will pay." That willingness to negotiate, broadcast to a national audience, should have prompted aggressive follow-up communication from anyone genuinely motivated by financial gain. The relative silence that followed suggests the communications were never credible to begin with. The volume of public response following the FBI's release of the recovered surveillance footage on February 10 exceeded what even veteran investigators anticipated. Nearly 18,000 calls flooded into the Pima County Sheriff's Department tip line in the days following Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, according to the joint statement released by the Sheriff's Department and FBI on February 12. More than 4,000 of those calls arrived within a single 24-hour window immediately after the public saw the images of the masked figure approaching Nancy's door. Several hundred detectives and agents have been assigned to process every one of those tips, working around the clock in a command center established specifically for this investigation. Processing this volume of information is not a matter of simply reading reports and filing them away. Each tip must be evaluated for credibility, cross-referenced against known facts of the case, and prioritized based on specificity and verifiability. Retired FBI hostage negotiator Richard Calco, speaking to CNN, explained that trained personnel review each submission looking for details that match evidence known to investigators but not released to the public. Tips that include specific, verifiable information get elevated for immediate follow-up. Tips that converge with other independent reports about the same person or location receive heightened scrutiny because multiple unrelated callers identifying the same individual suggests genuine connection rather than speculation. The investigative resources deployed to work through these tips represent one of the largest law enforcement operations in recent Arizona history. FBI field offices across the country have contributed personnel. The Phoenix FBI office has coordinated search teams combing desert terrain and roadways throughout the Catalina foothills. U.S. Customs and Border Protection has provided assistance given the proximity of some investigative activity to the Arizona-Mexico border. Local sheriff's deputies have conducted neighborhood canvasses, interviewing residents and collecting additional surveillance footage from private security systems throughout the area. This is not a case where a small team of detectives works leads as they trickle in. This is a full-scale mobilization treating every hour as critical to finding Nancy alive. The first major action emerging from this tip avalanche came on the evening of February 10th when deputies conducted a traffic stop south of Tucson. The subject of that stop was Carlos Palazuelos, a 27-year-old delivery driver from Rio Rico, Arizona, who would spend the next several hours in law enforcement custody while FBI evidence response teams executed a search warrant at his residence. According to what Palazuelos himself described to reporters the following morning, he was initially not told why he was being stopped. When FBI agents arrived at the scene and informed him he was being detained for questioning in connection with a kidnapping, his response was immediate confusion. "I asked them kidnapping of who," he told ABC7, describing the moment when agents told him Nancy Guthrie. What made the Palazuelos detention significant beyond a simple case of mistaken identity was timing and sourcing. According to a law enforcement official who spoke to ABC News, Palazuelos had been on the radar of investigators before the surveillance footage was released publicly. He was identified through electronic investigative tools including cell phone usage information and traffic data, according to sources familiar with the case. This means the public tip line, while generating his name among thousands of others, was not the original source that brought him to investigative attention. He was already being tracked through digital forensics that placed his phone or vehicle in locations relevant to the investigation at times that warranted further examination. The search warrant executed at Palazuelos' Rio Rico residence was sealed by a local judge from Santa Cruz County, Arizona, according to court records obtained by CNN. Sealed warrants are not standard practice. They are used when investigators believe that publicly disclosing the evidence presented to obtain the warrant could compromise ongoing investigative work or alert other suspects to law enforcement's knowledge and capabilities. The fact that a judge granted both the warrant and the sealing order indicates that investigators presented evidence substantial enough to justify intrusion into a private residence and compelling enough to keep that evidence hidden from public view. FBI evidence response teams, according to media reports from the scene and Palazuelos' own account, searched the residence through the night and into early morning hours. The front and back doors were damaged during entry, according to a woman identified as Palazuelos' mother-in-law who spoke to reporters outside the property. After several hours of questioning and the completion of the search, Palazuelos was released without charges. The Pima County Sheriff's Department announced that the search had concluded and the investigation was ongoing, standard language used when releasing someone who has not been arrested. The Sonoran Desert surrounding Tucson is an unforgiving landscape of saguaro cacti, rocky terrain, and vegetation that can conceal evidence for years if searchers don't know exactly where to look. FBI agents and search and rescue teams have been systematically combing this terrain since the early days of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, focusing their efforts on areas within a reasonable driving distance from her Catalina Foothills residence. According to official statements from the FBI Phoenix office and the Pima County Sheriff's Department, these searches are not random sweeps of open desert but targeted operations based on specific investigative leads and geographic profiling of where someone might transport a victim taken from that location in the pre-dawn hours. The search parameters extend beyond simple ground searches for Nancy herself. Investigators are looking for any physical evidence that the masked figure visible in the surveillance footage might have discarded before or after the abduction. According to a law enforcement source who spoke to CNN, teams are examining areas around Nancy's home and along roadways leading away from the Catalina Foothills for items that could have been dropped during the crime. The backpack itself, if emptied after use, could have been abandoned in desert terrain where it might not be discovered for months or years without systematic searching. Clothing worn during the abduction, gloves used to avoid fingerprints, the ski mask captured in the footage, any of these items discarded in the vast desert landscape could provide DNA evidence or other forensic material that links a specific individual to the crime. The FBI's public announcement that they would conduct extensive searches along multiple roadways in the Catalina Foothills reflects standard investigative practice in abduction cases. Perpetrators transporting victims from residential areas typically use major roadways that allow rapid departure from the crime scene. Investigators map likely routes based on traffic patterns, roadway access, and destinations that would offer privacy for holding a hostage. Surveillance cameras at intersections, gas stations, and businesses along those routes are reviewed for vehicles matching descriptions developed from witness statements or other evidence. Automated license plate readers, which capture every vehicle passing specific points on roadways, are queried for vehicles registered to persons of interest or matching general descriptions from investigative leads. The search activity around the residence of Nancy's other daughter Annie Guthrie, as reported by CBS News, reflects investigative theories about how the perpetrator gathered information about Nancy's schedule and routine. If someone was surveilling the family to determine when Nancy would be alone and vulnerable, they might have observed family gatherings at Annie's home to understand patterns of when Nancy visited relatives and when she returned to her own residence. Investigators canvassing that neighborhood are looking for witnesses who might have noticed vehicles or individuals that didn't belong, surveillance cameras that might have captured someone watching the family, and any evidence of pre-abduction reconnaissance that could identify who was gathering intelligence about Nancy's movements. Walmart stores across Arizona have become an unexpected component of the physical search operation. Following the identification of the backpack as an Ozark Trail hiker pack, investigators have been working with Walmart corporate security to trace purchases of that specific model. This involves reviewing transaction records at stores throughout the state and potentially neighboring regions, cross-referencing those purchases against databases of persons of interest, and in some cases reviewing security footage from stores where the backpack was sold to identify purchasers. Former homicide investigators who have explained retail tracking techniques to media emphasize that this is meticulous work requiring cooperation between corporate database administrators and law enforcement analysts, but it can produce direct links from crime scene evidence to specific individuals. The mustache visible through the ski mask in several frames of the surveillance footage has become a binary identifier that investigators are using to eliminate or confirm suspects. Facial hair of that prominence and style is either present or absent. Either a potential suspect has a dark mustache visible both above and below the lips as described in enhanced image analysis, or they don't. In a suspect pool that includes contractors, service providers, and neighbors who had access to or knowledge of Nancy's home, this single physical characteristic can immediately exclude individuals who don't match or elevate scrutiny of those who do. Investigators working through the massive volume of tips are asking a simple question about each person whose name emerges: do they have a mustache that matches what's visible in the footage? Sheriff Chris Nanos delivered a message to the public on February 11 that carried unmistakable weight for anyone following the investigation closely. Speaking directly to reporters from 13 News, the county's top law enforcement official stated plainly that more detainments are likely in connection with Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. This was not speculation or hedging. This was the sheriff telling the community and anyone potentially involved in the case that what happened with Carlos Palazuelos, the traffic stop, the hours of questioning, the FBI search of a private residence, would happen again. Investigators have identified additional persons of interest and are prepared to move on them as evidence and circumstances warrant. The strategic value of this public statement extends beyond simple transparency with the community. It applies pressure to individuals who might have information about the case or involvement in the crime itself. Anyone whose name has surfaced in tips, anyone whose cell phone data placed them in relevant locations at critical times, anyone who owns an Ozark Trail backpack or matches the physical description visible in surveillance footage now knows that investigators are actively working through a list and that detention for questioning is not a distant possibility but an imminent reality. That knowledge creates stress that sometimes produces results through changes in behavior that investigators can observe or through individuals coming forward with information before they are formally contacted. FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed to Fox News that investigators are looking at persons of interest in the plural, reinforcing Sheriff Nanos's indication that this is not a case where all investigative focus has narrowed to a single suspect. Multiple individuals have moved from the general pool of tips into active investigative scrutiny based on evidence that has not been publicly disclosed. Some may be connected to the crime directly. Some may have information about who is responsible without being perpetrators themselves. Some may be associates or accomplices whose involvement is limited to specific aspects of planning or execution. The sealed search warrant executed at Carlos Palazuelos' residence provides insight into how seriously investigators are treating the persons of interest they have identified. Former homicide investigator Eric Black, speaking to Cold TV, expressed skepticism that a magistrate would authorize a residential search based solely on physical resemblance to footage showing a masked individual. "I think there must be more evidence tying this location to the Guthrie investigation," Black stated. Whatever evidence investigators presented to obtain that warrant was substantial enough to convince a judge that probable cause existed and significant enough to justify keeping that evidence confidential. The fact that Palazuelos was released without charges does not mean he has been eliminated as a person of interest. Released without charges is a legal status indicating that investigators lacked sufficient evidence at that specific moment to arrest him. It does not mean the investigation of that individual has concluded or that additional evidence won't emerge. Investigators retain the ability to continue examining his background, communications, movements, and connections as the broader investigation develops. The investigative process Sheriff Nanos has described publicly is systematic and methodical. Identify persons of interest through tips, electronic evidence, and investigative analysis. Detain and question those individuals. Search their properties when probable cause exists. Eliminate those who can account for their whereabouts during the critical time frame. Continue pursuing those whose stories contain inconsistencies or whose evidence matches crime scene materials. With several hundred investigators working through unprecedented volumes of tips and evidence, the pace of developments is accelerating rather than slowing. 12 days have passed since Nancy Guthrie disappeared from her home in the pre-dawn hours of February 1, 2026. 12 days without the medications that sustain her life. 12 days with a pacemaker that stopped transmitting vital cardiac data at 2:28 in the morning and has remained silent ever since. 12 days of a family pleading publicly for proof that their mother and grandmother is still alive and that the communications claiming to hold her are genuine. 12 days of an investigation that has mobilized hundreds of federal agents, generated nearly 18,000 tips from concerned citizens, and produced surveillance footage that was believed to be permanently destroyed but was recovered through forensic technology that didn't exist a generation ago. The backpack visible in those 44 seconds of recovered footage remains the most tangible lead investigators have. The Ozark Trail hiker pack, identified through frame-by-frame analysis and confirmed as a Walmart-exclusive product, is now the subject of purchase tracking across Arizona and neighboring states. Investigators are working with corporate database administrators to trace every transaction involving that specific model, cross-referencing purchases against persons of interest, reviewing security footage from stores where the backpack was sold, and systematically building a list of individuals who acquired the exact item carried by the masked figure who approached Nancy's door. Somewhere in Walmart's vast network of transaction records, there may be a purchase that leads directly to whoever took Nancy Guthrie. The mustache visible through the ski mask has become a simple but powerful filtering mechanism for the suspect pool. Dark facial hair prominent enough to be seen through mask material in low-light surveillance footage is a characteristic that either matches a potential suspect or eliminates them entirely. Investigators processing the thousands of tips that continue to arrive daily are asking that basic question about every name that emerges: does this person have a mustache consistent with what the footage shows? It is a binary test that narrows the field with every individual examined and excluded. The desert searches continue across terrain that stretches from the Catalina foothills south toward the Mexican border. FBI teams are not simply looking for Nancy herself but for any physical evidence discarded by the perpetrator. The backpack if emptied after use. The ski mask and gloves worn during the abduction. Clothing that might carry DNA or other forensic material. Any item connected to the crime that was abandoned in the belief that desert landscape would conceal it indefinitely. Systematic grid searches, guided by geographic profiling of likely routes and disposal locations, continue day after day with the understanding that a single piece of physical evidence could transform the investigation. The sealed search warrant executed at Carlos Palazuelos' residence stands as evidence that investigators possess information the public has not seen. Magistrates do not authorize intrusions into private homes based on superficial resemblance or speculative tips. The warrant was granted because investigators presented evidence substantial enough to meet legal standards for probable cause. That evidence remains sealed, protecting investigative techniques and knowledge that law enforcement does not want potential suspects to understand. What was found during that search, whether it eliminated Palazuelos or deepened scrutiny of his potential involvement, has not been disclosed. What is certain is that Sheriff Nanos meant exactly what he said when he told reporters that more detainments are likely. Nancy Long Guthrie was born on January 27, 1942 in Fort Wright, Kentucky. She raised 3 children in Arizona over 5 decades. She attended family game nights and virtual church services. She lived independently into her 80s with a mind described by law enforcement as sharp and engaged. Someone took her from her home, and that someone made choices during those pre-dawn hours that left evidence behind. A backpack. A mustache. Blood on a doorstep. A pacemaker signal that went dark. Digital timestamps that cannot be altered. Surveillance footage that could not be permanently destroyed. If you have any information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or the Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-351-4900. A $50,000 reward is available for information leading to her recovery and the arrest of those responsible. If this case has shown you how modern investigative techniques and public engagement can combine to pursue justice in even the most difficult circumstances, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you're here when the next development breaks. These investigations don't end when a video ends. They continue every hour of every day until answers are found. Thank you for watching, and thank you for caring enough about Nancy Guthrie to stay informed as this search continues.